Hi, and welcome to another episode of View Mirror. It's a show about queer people, by queer people, for queer people, and our allies. I'm Scott, and today I'm joining you from the unceded and shared territories of the Coast Salish people, specifically the Snanawas and Qualicum First Nations, on whose lands I am grateful to be able to live, work, love, and play.
And hello, I'm Erin, and I'm coming to you from the unceded territories of the Haudenosaunee and Anishinaabe people, where I'm privileged to live, work, and play.
And I am Don Texan, coming to you from the unceded territories of the Deschutes and Hoopachiset people in the wonderful Alberni Valley, of course. Before we go to our topic, which is really kind of hot, or maybe not, I just got to do this before we do anything else. This is Queer View Mirror coming at ya. Today, we're going to be talking about something that's kind of sensitive to the three of us, especially, and I'm sure a lot of others out there. As you can see on your screen right now, there are no spring chickens showing on your monitor or your screen. We are at the point of our lives where we have to take into consideration our retirement plans. What are we going to be doing? Who are we going to be doing it with? And so many there's stuff that has to be taken into consideration. I was just talking to Erin a while ago. I said, do we classify this issue as a crisis, a category, a situation, a dilemma? And Erin's answer was?
I think it's a situation. I don't think it's crisis. I think it might have been about 10, 15, 20 years ago, but I think we've been making improvements, but we're not there yet. There's still a long way to go.
Yeah, so on this topic, we're all on the way to retirement, and it seems that retirement isn't going to be easy for the LGBTQ, as we have heard stories and we've learned about situations where people are even being forced to go back into the closet when they retire and avail of this retirement services and different facility services or whatever.
Well, it's not so much retirement we're talking about, but the care that older people need, as they get older and require those supports, whether that's caregiving or medical care, and what that's going to look like for our generation, for the older, the younger boomers and the older Gen Xers. We're getting closer and closer to those dates and requiring those services. That's where I think we need to delve into.
Well, in the articles that you sent me, both of you sent me some articles. I wanted to talk about three basic points from that information that we got. First, the aging or the senior LGBTQ2 SPA plus, like about three issues. One is the issue of discrimination or prejudice. And then the other one would be inadvertently isolation, because they will be treated differently. And another one would be the availability of these services and facilities. Is there enough? Are we able to access this?
Yes. And to your last point, Don, I think the question is there enough? Doesn't only just impact our community. I don't think there's enough, period, for any community, for the aging population in general. I don't think there are enough what we would colloquially call retirement homes or care. Now it's called long-term care facilities. I don't think there are enough. So it's not just something for our community. However, I think there are some special challenges for our community when looking at gaining access to those types of services and facilities. Am I right, Scott?
Exactly. And, unfortunately in Canada, the statistics are kind of sparse, but looking at the National Resource Center on LGBTQ plus aging out of the US, they predict that by 2030, there's going to be 7 million queer, for want of a better word, people who identify as not cis, out there. So 2030, 7 million people going to be requiring that type of medical care and that type of support as they age. Most of those resources seem to be concentrated in Florida and New York City. But what I've noticed in Canada, as of 2021, out of the, in a survey done in 2021, with the LGBTQ plus community, 41% of adults 45 plus worry about having to hide their identity to access the care they need as they get older. And 58% of trans and non-binary people are also worrying about hiding their identities. So it jumps like from the LGB part, 41%, and then for our trans and non-binary friends, it's 58%. So, a lot of people are very, very concerned about this.
Well, as they should, because, aging is inevitable, right? And like you said, it's not always available. So how about you, Erin? I mean, what are your considerations for your retirement?
Well, that's a great question. Because I mean, I am already retired. I was fortunate in being able to take early retirement, although I am well north of 60.
Okay.
However, so my wife and I we both retired at the same time about 3 years ago, and we relocated to be closer to our children and now grandchildren. So we had to choose a new location to live, and we found a very wonderful condo style apartment building. It's fairly large. There's 165 units, but we are basically the demographic. I'd say 80% are, if not 90%, are retired. I'd say about 75% are probably over the age of 70. And it's a general population building, and we have had no issues with this first step of our retirement, i.e., we've been welcomed into the building. We've made some wonderful friends, both part of the community and not part of the community, allies, and we've had no issues. So the first part has been very, very smooth for us, and we're very, very fortunate. What the consideration is the next step. And having seen my parents go into care facilities, it's very important that you find one that provides you with the level of care, quality care that is required. But for us, it's going to be, will we be able to comfortably stay in the same room or mini apartment or suite as we move into a facility that provides greater care? We're totally self-sufficient right now, of course, but as that changes, the question is, will we have access to that type of a facility? Getting to your point of, how many people having to go back into the closet and deny their authenticity for fear of reprisal, or not being able to be admitted into or selected to be in a care facility.
Are there laws that protect us in some way from this kind of discrimination?
Yes, and it's within provincial jurisdiction for those that are provincially funded and privately funded, against harassment or discrimination, against accommodation, and that would fall under that. However, just because there are laws doesn't mean that they are adhered to. I mean, it is illegal to rob a bank, but some people still rob banks. So it doesn't guarantee that there will be full compliance. However, what I think is more common the issue is I think facilities are trying to wrap their head around it, and they're trying to figure out how to best accommodate our community. I think a lot of them have these boilerplate listings or information or postings on their websites or printed marketing collateral or whatever that says that we are an opening, welcoming facility to everyone. We are diverse and open to equity and inclusive environment. That I think they have that motherhood statement. It's a question of how well is that implemented when it comes down to the details, to the process, to their intake forms, to the training of their staff, to the training of the administration. Is there a residence bill of rights that will clearly state for all the residents what behavior is expected and what behaviors won't be tolerated around harassment, et cetera, et cetera. That's the trick. And when I look at the information posted publicly for these facilities, I find the motherhood statement quite frequently, and specifically in the Toronto area. We are not in Toronto, but in the Toronto area, the GTA. But what I don't see is that sort of the Bill of Rights and the process. That's what is still, I won't say lacking, because it may be there, but not evident.
So it's in the process.
Yes, that is where my fear sort of lies. And having gone through that and coming out at work, yes, I had protection from provincial governments, from federal legislation, and from the work policy itself was actually ahead of the curve of the provincial regulations and statutes. However, the process is where everything fell apart. Now that's all been fixed since I documented, and we've gone through all the processes for the next person coming behind. But these facilities have to keep in mind, it's not a question of when someone from our community or a couple from our community wants to access their facilities. It's going to be a question of when, not if.
There are facilities that
Yes.
have these in place.
Yeah.
But not enough.
It's enough.
Yes,
you want to go ideally, like even in Toronto, there are facilities that are there's a few that are almost solely for the community, which is awesome. But for ourselves, we want to remain integrated as we have in our lives here.
Yes.
With the rest of the community, I'd love to have people from cisgender community, from the straight community, from the Muslim community, from whatever community, because I find personally, we find richness in that.
Yes.
And we would like not have to go to a segregated facility.
Of course, we are programmed as social beings.
Yes, exactly.
Right? So we have to socialize.
Yeah. And my worry is for smaller centers. I mean, we talk about the GTA, that's fine. But if you go into smaller communities that are less than 100,000 people, 50,000 people, or 20,000 people, when we drive through them to the country roads and we see these smaller cities or large towns, I guess you might call them, we drive by them, we see like seniors facility, long-term care facility, and they're not large. They probably have maybe 20, 30 rooms. But if there's someone in that community that wants to stay there so that their family can be nearby, how well equipped are those smaller facilities? That may not be as aware as the metropolitan center of Vancouver, Toronto, Montreal, Ottawa, etc. Right? That's the trick. Will people have to move a distance to be away from family to find a facility that they can be welcomed into?
Yeah.
And further to your point, Erin, some of the statistics that I said, because of course I'm a stats nerd, 17% of 2S LGBTQ people, 65 and plus, are considered isolated. They live alone, or they live alone in a rural area, or whatever their definition of rural is for these purposes. So yeah, I think you've kind of nailed it there. It's about the inclusion as opposed to the facilities themselves. And I think this has always been a bit of a challenge with the, again, blanket term queer community is, we either become ghettoized or we ghettoize ourselves.
Yes.
I remember living at Church and Wellesley when I was in my early 20s, and one day I realized that I could go my entire life without ever speaking to another cis het person if I wanted to, if that was the kind of life I wanted to build. And that certainly, especially for people that are older than we are, that's kind of where they found their safety. So maybe reintegrating into, the community at large would be a lot more daunting.
Yeah.
And that's fair. Yeah. I can, excuse me, I can totally understand and appreciate that. It's also a question of economics. I mean, I'm very fortunate. We will be able to afford a facility, but if you're looking at going to a fully funded government facility, then your selection, it just collapses as to what's available. And that's the interesting part. And these are the people that need the most support, the most welcoming facility out there, the most protections.
Yes, because long-term care is not inexpensive.
No. And my mother's situation, again, she's very fortunate that she could afford care, but she's also in the end stages of Alzheimer's, which requires specialized care, which means the number of facilities that were available to her were cut right down from the gate. So she got on a list when it was appropriate, and actually probably a little bit before she was ready for it, because she got a bed very quickly. So there's that system called FAB, which is first appropriate bed. So
Okay.
in my mom's case, they said to the family, go out and pick your top 5 facilities that you think your mother would be most comfortable in and which she would like. And unfortunately, she was long past the point of having any kind of input in it. So we came up with our top 5, and I think the number 3 one was the one that came up quickly. And we got her in right away. But that was the choice. It was like, okay, here's a bed now. If you turn it down, and you've only got you have a month to get in there. If you turn it down, you go to the bottom of the list, and you could be waiting 5 to 7 years for the next phone
Yikes.
call.
Yes.
And this is just for a cisgendered person, right?
Yeah. Her considerations, were all neurological.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's the trick, right? You have to almost anticipate that in 4 or 5 years, you're going to need this type of care, X type of care. And you may not know that right now, because of course that can show up and develop at any time in a person's lifetime. So it
could be sooner or
real
later.
crapshoot.
And I'm also looking at my mom. My mom's 84, so at least she's living with me. So I'm her care facility for now. But
for now,
for now. But it will come to a point. I'm seeing that it will be more. It will take more out of me, or something more than what I have now.
Well, I think the other option that governments are looking to is to provide more in-home support, though, right? So maybe it's more beyond your capabilities, but would you be better served to have someone to come in every day and provide that level of support if they could do it in a very competent, safe, and respectful way?
Oh, yeah.
And I think that's a lot cheaper.
Oh,
than
definitely.
put people into a long-term care facility, right?
Oh,
So
definitely.
that's the other thing.
Actually, I heard that there's a move by the government to encourage this kind of situation.
Of course there is. It's much cheaper for them. Absolutely. Multi-generational homes.
Exactly.
Right.
Well, that's what happened to me and my partner who passed away in 2019. He became sort of like incapacitated. So there were people who came here every day, 3 times a day, to look after him, prepare his meals while I was at work. Right. And that worked out pretty well. At least I kept my promise that he will not be put in a home. He will not be put in a facility or anything. He died peacefully in this home that he had.
Yeah.
Which I am thankful for.
Yes, I'm sure. Yeah. And the other thing is there's also a stigma that the transgender population of our community are also having to deal with as well. When you look at a recent study done by the Trans Pulse Project in Ontario, 10% of the transgender people were denied or had treatment stopped in an ER when they were identified as transgender. 25% of the population were very hesitant to even go to an ER to receive medical care for fear of being harassed or have discriminatory, be a victim of discriminatory behavior.
Isn't that against the law?
Yes, it is.
But
and
it was done, like you said.
40% of the population reported that they experienced harassment or discriminatory behavior from their family doctor on at least one occasion. So there's already this phobia against medical, quote unquote, medical facilities, which a lot of people see long-term care facilities are, because there is a medical component to them.
Yeah.
So that community already has that they feel is working against them. And then they have to deal with, will I be able to go with my partner? Will I find something that's accommodating? Will the other residents be welcome? Will the staff be well trained? So they're sort of dealing with that already. Now that is improving. There's a lot of medical programs and hospitals that are working very hard to improve that those statistics and have a better treatment plan. and structure for the transgender community. So that is on the increase, but there are still problems.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, Scott, I want to pick up on something you already said. Like 7 million, are those just the statistics for the boomers?
No, well,
More or less.
generationally, I'm not sure. By 2030, there will be 7 million 2S LGBTQ plus people over the age of 65 requiring care.
Yeah, that's kind of scary. I was discussing with Erin earlier. It's a looming dire. It's not a crisis, but it's a looming dire situation. So my question now is, what would we suggest to somebody who's coming into that situation? Like maybe from your personal experience, like you're coming into that situation. Erin is nicely settled. I'm kind of nicely settled as well because I'm my home and I can just call people to come over. I'll just tell my 3 sons to come over and take care of me when I'm old. But like that'll happen. But
Well, and you just pointed something out, Don, that's quite interesting. You have 3 sons. Erin, you have kids and grandkids.
Mhm.
I don't.
Oh,
Right. Yeah.
So, although you have an extended family that could step in and, help you pass the finish line, for want of a better analogy, for me, those options are going to look very, very different. I'm very blessed that I have a whole herd of nieces, no nephews for some reason, but lots of nieces.
really?
Oh yeah, we do a lot of girl talk. It's pretty fun. So I do have younger people in my life that I trust who can, step in and make those decisions. But, I'm certainly not alone in that. I'm certainly not a unique type of situation. I think for queer people who were born around the time I was, we didn't look at children as an option. Like it just wasn't on paper. So, for me, I think it's going to be a lot of research. It's going to be asking a lot of questions. I'm looking at doing some living wills, some powers of attorney. I'm going to make sure legally I've got those people in place.
Good.
Because if nothing else, this life has taught me nothing's for certain, and things can change in a heartbeat.
In a blink of an eye.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I was going to point out. Given my background. Yes, we'll talk about that later. Go to the legal aspects of it. So, for people out there that don't have children or significant others, it's going to be a lot of self-advocacy. It's going to be a lot of having some serious thought and conversations around powers of attorney for financial and medical life decisions. Who do you trust? Who can you have those conversations with so that they know what your wishes are? Because if it comes to the point where there's a very sudden incapacitation, who's going to be there? You sort of need to think about that. And it's not a fun thing to think about, but it's a very necessary thing to think about. And especially for our community, if you don't have those built-in supports, is to try and find those trusted individuals in your sphere of influence within your life circle, to have as powers of attorney, etc. Someone that can help to advocate with you and for you.
Well, I just remembered I had a friend who passed away a few years ago, and he did not have children, as you said, but he had a niece. And like speaking to Scott's situation, right? He had a niece who he trusted with everything, and she took care of everything. And as you said, Scott, she definitely helped him cross the finish line. He was gone too soon, though. He's only 60. He didn't even reach 65.
Oh dear.
Yeah, he had pancreatic cancer, but he had a celebration of life before he passed away. He said, "No funeral for me. I want a party, a big party." So he threw himself a big party. Good. And a few months after, he crossed the finish line with a smile on his face.
There you go. Yeah.
And again, it was in his home.
Yeah.
And I would imagine most of us baby boomers have like invested in a home and can afford to buy a home. And so we have a home, right? To more or less pass away in or get, die in peace, sort of like. Right. But the Gen Xers, I don't know. Especially the latest with the prices of houses now, they won't be able to afford a home anymore.
Well, I think Gen Xers were still okay. It's the millennials and Gen Zs that I think are struggling.
Mhm.
Yeah, and that's where we're starting to look and see more multi-generational homes
Mhm.
Yes.
being developed. There was a big push for building developers to build smaller homes, 2-bedroom bungalow for the aging population. And now that seems to be changing to building bigger homes, but multi-generational. So instead of building 3 separate houses on 3 separate lots, you can build one on one lot, a bigger home with like in-law suites or grandparent suites,
Mhm.
main living, and other levels that are not quite self-contained, but allows many members of a family to live under one roof, comfortably. And we're
Yeah.
starting to see a bit more of that. Our youngest daughter, my stepdaughter, is an architectural designer, so that's how I sort of know what's
Oh,
going
okay.
on in that field. And so we're starting to see a bit more of that happening.
Yeah.
Well, I also another on the issue of like economics and finances. It also takes a bit of preparation to reach that status as well, right?
Oh,
When you saved your money, you made your
yes.
investments and all that. So when you come to retirement, you have enough money to retire on.
Mhm.
And not,
Exactly.
not everybody's in that position though.
No, and
No.
that's the thing, and especially right now, it's as Scott mentioned, the millennials and Gen Zers are. There's not a lot of disposable income to start throwing
Mhm.
into RRSPs and planning for that. And there's a lot of companies that have historically been known as having pension plans. A lot of companies now aren't offering pension plans. It's totally self-directed. And if you don't
Mhm.
have A, the self-discipline to do that, or B, the leftover finances at the end of the month to make that contribution, then what?
Yes.
That's the thing, So I'm fortunate. My daughters have already done that and
Mhm.
are self-directed to a certain degree, but also have pensions. Our middle daughter's also a lawyer, but she lives in Europe, but she works for the United Nations and they have a pension plan and all that thing. So there is that. But if you don't, you really got to have self-discipline. And people are finding it hard at the end of the month with the cost of gas
Oh
and groceries
yeah.
and mortgages and things. And having kids
Exactly.
is expensive if you have them. And
Mom's
yeah.
been away for almost a month now, so I have to do some grocery shopping.
Oh
I
no.
was shocked. Like, what the
Yeah,
hell? Like,
I
I had
know.
like a quarter of a buggy filled up, and my bill was $128. I said, "What did
Oh
I
yeah.
buy?"
Oh yeah. I know. It is real. It is very, very real.
It is.
And we're not talking, gourmet goods,
No,
No.
right?
for basic
So
stuff
that's
like
the other
butter
thing.
and milk and
So
eggs.
when people are thinking of retirement, what's it going to look like for them if they go to a reduced income from instead of having their salary or their monthly pay? What do they have back to fall on? And then that's going to impact what type of long care facility they can look forward to.
Yeah.
So again, this is where you have to start doing your homework and then see what's going on there. I think it is a bit of a hot button for governments. I know a lot of the different political parties are sort of have their eye on that as a policy platform, making sure that there is money for development, better long-term care facilities, especially with the tragedies we saw that came out of
Mhm.
COVID and the lack of proper care and the cutting of corners. I think it's a bit more under a microscope.
Mhm.
But at the end of the day, if you're not in a publicly funded facility, you're in a private one. They're in it to make money.
Oh
That's
yeah.
right. So that's going to be the trick: is what type of facility you have in your area that will fit all your needs, both financially, emotionally, medically, etc.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And for our community, that's even more of a stressor because of who we are.
Yeah.
Well, I like to pick at this point your legal brain, Madame Erin.
Yes.
Like, so in terms of legal preparation, like, because Scott mentioned power of attorney, living will, what else is there?
Oh,
Directive for
there.
your Like don't pull the plug thing or something
A
equal.
DNR, do not resuscitate order.
Do not resuscitate.
Mhm.
And I came across a term called living will or living trust.
Right.
Can you speak to it, to that issue?
Yeah, not my area of expertise. Scott, you feel free to jump in on this one and rescue me from this one. So it's about looking after your finances, and it's about making decisions while you're still competent to do so as to how your funds are going to be allocated for your care. So it's sort of like a trust that's being set up, but it's not a trust that kicks in when you pass. It's a trust that that kicks in while you're still here for your care.
I see. Okay, so that's part of also the part of the preparation that we're talking about.
Yeah, if that's something that you think that you need, right?
Mhm.
Now, usually you can look after that if you have your own resources with a financial power of attorney, right? So
Yeah.
my wife and I were each our financial powers of attorney, and the backup plans are we each have a child on selected to look after our, if for some reason one predeceases the other, then we also have a plan B, another person. You should always have at least two layers of protection. So that's sort of like our living trust. They, Julie Julie has the power of financial access to all our financial resources. Should that be needed?
Yeah, so what you're saying is it's good to have a financial exit plan.
Yes, as it were. And estate planning. If you think you're going to have some of an estate left behind, you want to do the estate planning ahead of time for sure.
Okay, so another issue I know we brought it up last time, so I want to bring it up again. The issue of how do you call it? Is it euthanasia or is it a better term for it?
Oh, I think you're
Like
talking about the
assisted-
MAID program, right? Medically
assisted.
medical assisted
death? Is it that one?
something death. But yeah, it's the acronym is MAID, MAID.
Okay.
Yeah.
So can that be a consideration?
Sure.
Well, I think that's part of your living will, though.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I mean that's something that is to be done sooner rather than later, because you have to be proven to be medically competent and mentally competent to make that type of decision. So that would be made in consort with your if you have a will already, who the executor is, medical professionals that know you well, etc., to draw that up.
Because that would be sort of like a more economic route. But I know economics are not a consideration. Like you can have assisted whatever, passing away if you're medically incapable or incapacitated. Because I did witness that. Like somebody, he was still lucid, but he was like, he wanted to die with dignity and he couldn't walk anymore. He couldn't drive anymore. And I don't know, his physical situation warranted that he already had that in place, right? So I think he just called in the chip, so to speak.
So to speak, yeah, exactly. Yeah. And that's where you would, for my parents on their hospital records, we made sure that it was known there was a DNR as per their wishes, a do not resuscitate order right in the front cover or the first page of their medical chart. Now they're all digital, so the first screen of digital, they would have that. So to make sure that that's known, and we're talking about a lot of legal documents here, and you can go to a legal aid clinic to get that done. You can. I mean, I hesitate to say online because online is sort of the last resort. They're okay, but not great because it's boilerplate and not sort of tailored to your needs. But, if you can't afford a lawyer, you can go to a legal aid clinic, especially at any university that has a law school will have a free legal aid clinic. So there are lots of bigger firms that do pro bono stuff around stuff like that, meaning that they don't charge you. So don't put it off because you don't think you can afford it. There are ways to find places that will do that for you.
Okay, and if you don't know where to begin, you can always contact your local hospice. They always have people that will provide information for you. As well, I don't know if you've heard of this. It's kind of hit my radar recently, but there's what they call death doulas. So very much like a childbirth doula, but for your end of life stuff. And that's what they do, is they're kind of, for want of a better word, death coaches. They make sure you have everything in place, that, all your wishes are being attended to, that you've got your care and whatnot. But a death doula as well would be able to support you with, okay, you need to make this decision, this decision. It's almost like you can get a little checklist.
Wow.
But I wanted to mention, though, Don, like you were talking about the MAID program, quite recently, I have a friend who's living with Parkinson's, and he's actually just had to go into a care facility because he can't be cared for at home anymore. And he asked his doctor, sorry, I'm jumping ahead a little bit. He's now experiencing moments of dementia as part of the Parkinson's. So he has these moments where he's not clear at all. But most of the time he's, dialed in and he's there the way we are. But he approached his doctor and said, I want to talk about the MAID program. And his doctor said to him, I'm sorry, that ship has passed.
Really?
Because we can't be sure that you're of sound mind.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. So had he put this into place a year or two beforehand, he could have gone through with that process. But now he can't.
Yeah.
Oh.
So if that is some, if you do want that option, you need to start talking about it sooner rather than later.
Right. So the only option it has left now is to have a DNR order and do not resuscitate if that's what he wishes.
Yeah, exactly.
Because when my partner was about to pass away, I considered it, and again, I get the same response. It's too late for that now, right? And well, fortunately, he didn't suffer. I mean, he didn't stay for long. When he started to go downhill, it was about 3-4 months. Then he died in peace in his bed with his eyes open, and I had to close the. I know.
Oh, I'm sorry, Don.
Yeah, very sorry. Yeah,
but I was happy that he had a peaceful. There was nothing stuck into him. There were no dextrose or IVs or whatever. He just,
had some dignity. So
he just breathed his last on his bed,
surrounded by those that he loved. So loved him. Yeah. So I mean, the bottom line is yes, it's an issue for the LGBTQ plus community. It's something that if you're approaching that age, you might want to think about sooner rather than later. I think for those that are very young generations, I think they've got lots of other things they need to worry about. So it's something that is sort of there. My hope is that the situation improves over the next few decades for them. But it is something that our community needs to be mindful of when looking for long-term care and elder care for themselves or for their loved ones that are part of the community.
Yes. I heard it once said that growing old is not for wussies. And it's true. Like, you gotta be tough to grow old in this world, right? But there are resources, there are support available, and not that much, but there are. I was going to try to Scott now. Like, what would you tell the people who are watching? Like, where can we go to? What Google searches should we come into? Like, the death doula is very interesting. So I just type in death doula and get a bunch of information about that.
Yeah, in your local area, if you want somebody local, although I'm sure like everything else in the 21st century, it's available remote service as well. But if, you're watching right now and you want more information, there's going to be some links at the end of the episode and some more information for you to at least be able to do some research on your own.
All right. So we'll bring it to a close. I'll ask Erin to give her final statement for the episode. And I'll go to Scott, and I'll go to me.
Yeah. Well, thanks very much for watching, and thanks very much for your input, Don and Scott. Always a pleasure. It's something that once again our community just has to be very mindful of. But other than that, have a great week. Live your life, man. Live your life. Yeah, life's too short, and you're dead a long time.
Exactly, Scott.
I think I want to get that on my tombstone.
What was that again? Life's too short and you're dead alone. You're dead forever. Unless you believe in reincarnation. That's another episode.
That's another show, Don. But, thank you so much for joining us today. And Don and Erin, I always treasure our time together chatting. And thank you for going down this rabbit hole with me. And learning about what's out there and what's happening. So until next time, Queer View Mirror, we'll see you later.
All right, that's a wrap for today. Growing old, like I said, is not for pussies. It's for strong individuals, and we are those individuals.
We are not old, we are gold.
Exactly. Catch you next time.